So this week in Herb 1000, we are going to start with the history of herbal medicine in North America after colonization. And to kind of start out with that story, we're going to talk a bit about Echinacea. And you might be really familiar with Echinacea. This is Echinacea purpurea, and it has these combs on it. It's in the Asteraceae family. And for purpurea, the tops are used for medicine and the roots, but there's other species of Echinacea throughout the United States. It mostly grows on the plains, so South Dakota, North Dakota, Wyoming, Montana, all the way in the plains up to the Rockies. I mean, it's native to this continent. And we might know this herb because at about the 1990s, Echinacea became marketed throughout the United States for use in preventing the cold and flu. And what's interesting when we follow this story is how we can kind of understand the development of herbal medicine in the United States when we look at the history here for Echinacea. So in 2002, this of adults that use supplements, Echinacea was used by 40%, so it had 40% of the market. Now 5 years later, Echinacea only had about 20% of the market. So why would something so popular all of a sudden fall in 5 years? Now children that used herbal supplements in 2007, still it was 40% of that market. So for some reason adults use it less, but children use it more. And if you think about parents relying on how often children get sick, and parents relying on their children to go to school so they can go to work, you know, this the craziness of life here in the US where you can't miss a day of work or school. You can see why any promise that Echinacea would take away and reduce colds and flus would gain market share. And if we look at what we can ask is, when we look at the ethnobotanical data and how it was used originally, was it used to prevent cold and flu? And when we look at ethnobotanical data now, this was collected in the 70s and the late 19th century, and we find that tribes were not necessarily using it to prevent sickness and cold and flu. Actually, they were using it when there was sepsis, and when there was a snake bite, or when there was a really, really infected tooth. And they also used it for sore throat. Now, we don't know what caused the sore throat. We don't know if it's a viral sore throat or a sore throat caused by a bacteria like streptococcus, but it was used for sore throat by many tribes. It was also used for gonorrhea and some coughs and sore mouth. So when we look at it, it's not obvious that it would be a plant used for preventing the cold and flu. So there we have possible pre-colonization uses. We don't know because it was collected post-colonization. And then how did it go into being used in America? And we can follow that story to a man by the name of D.H. Myers, and he had been in South Dakota and had been with the Sioux, that he called them, or the Dakota, and they showed him that it's a remedy for snake bites. So D.H. Myers gets extremely excited about Echinacea and the miracle cure that it was. If you got bit by a rattlesnake, that it would cure your rattlesnake bite, and marketed it around the country by grabbing a rattlesnake in front of shows and having the rattlesnake bite him and then treat himself with Echinacea. So he was definitely a showman. And so Echinacea was the original snake oil. And he did snake oil shows around the country to show what an effective treatment for snake bite snake oil was. And he was so excited about this remedy, he went to the eclectic physicians, which were herbalists in the 1850s up until the early 20th century. And John Uri Lloyd, he went to John Uri Lloyd because he's the father of pharmacognosy and the father of pharmacology here in the United States. And he went to John Uri Lloyd, who is always curious about a new herbal medicine, a new drug, and he was a chemist, so he would break it down and look at it. And he wrote him a letter and he said, I want to show you how effective Echinacea is, and I'm gonna come and you can have a snake bite me and I will show you how Echinacea works. Like, it gets rid of the snake bite. And John Uri Lloyd is like, is this guy insane? Like, he's gonna have us, like, no, we don't need that, thank you very much, we're not interested. And so then D.H. Myers was like, well, is it because you don't have a snake? I'll bring my snake. And anyway, he ends up convincing John Uri Lloyd to watch him do this, and they learn about Echinacea's use. And the eclectic physicians found huge uses for Echinacea, and they used different varieties. They used Echinacea pallida, which is the pale purple coneflower. They used Echinacea angustifolia, which they found to be most potent if mixed with pallida. They tried out Echinacea purpurea, but that wasn't their main one. And they used it for puerperal fever, so for sepsis after childbirth, that it was effective against. They used it against gangrene. They used it against all sorts of sepsis conditions, and also with cancers and the pain from cancer. So that's fascinating. So it was never used by them as a treatment for a cold or flu. It was used for when the tissue is dying from an infection or a poison. And that's curious that we end up with it being used for colds and flus, or prevention thereof. And one of the neat things about Echinacea, it has a taste to it that we call the diffusive taste. So when you chew on Echinacea, Spilanthes is very similar. It goes in your mouth and just starts diffusively buzzing, and your whole mouth becomes tingly, and you can feel how active the medicine is. So I'm sure any 19th century chemist would be very curious about these. And what Echinacea has is what is called reactive oxygen species, or ROS. And it's alkamides in there. There's also some different acids in the plant, which actually can kill bacteria, because bacteria live on the surface. So we can see how strong that would be, and actually can help the white blood cells with the reactive oxygen species, killing bacteria and cleaning them up, and very effective against strep. So if we look at sore throat being used at the tribe, it was probably strep or a bacterial infection in the throat. And so the eclectic physicians who wrote tons about Echinacea, I hope you get a chance to peruse that. The eclectic physicians go away by 1940. They get shut down by the Flexner Report, and there's no more schools teaching herbal medicine, no more colleges, there's no more herbal doctors in the United States. But in 1930s, the Schwabe Corporation in Germany goes through the John Uri Lloyd's texts and studies, and they mine it for information, and they mine it and they find Echinacea. And so they do tons of studies in Germany on Echinacea, bringing Echinacea out of the plains and to Germany to study it. And they study it for the next 50 years and figure out that they believe it can help colds and flus, but they're a company, so they market it as a prevention against colds and flus. Herein lies the problem. It wasn't a problem from them because they made a huge amount of money marketing Echinacea. In Germany alone, Echinacea is in 800 different products. There are over, if you go to the store, I don't see many formulas for upper respiratory illnesses that do not have Echinacea in them, correct? So huge amounts of Echinacea. The companies, Schwabe, and they patented different medicines made from it. And now the problem is, if you take Echinacea all the time, after 4 days or maybe 5, it depends on what researcher you're looking at, it is not active anymore. it is really used for an acute, strong episode of infection, and then it's supposed to be stopped because it no longer becomes effective. It is an immunomodulator, so it modulates the immune system to pay attention at a time and to use all of its resources to fight off the infection. Very good against certain strains of bacteria, as well as poisons and any sepsis, and staph as well. But it's just kind of fascinating. So then, we get in the 1990s, everyone is kind of getting turned on to Echinacea, and at the same time, the plains are being robbed. They're bulldozing prairies to grab it. So there's all sorts of problems with that. So if we look at the development of herbal medicine in the United States and how it has affected North American plants traveling to other countries, and just how information from the first peoples on this continent went into herbal medicine in the United States without any credit to it. So if you look at Echinacea's products, no one says it's a native to North America, and we were gifted this from the heritage of the exchange post-colonialism in America from the tribes. So it's really fascinating how herbal medicine works that way in the market.